seeing the bigger picture. So for many of us, if we want to start to develop an attribute of change, we must understand that that attribute will always stay as like a pillar in our lives, which we ultimately start to use as a temple. And it's that temple which we acknowledge could have been serving the temple for anger and frustration, or the temple of loving and goodness. It's depending on what we want to use that temple for is ultimately the choice of the universe. It's the choice of our soul. And sometimes the soul can be fed, and when I'm talking about the soul, I'm talking about distraction. Because ultimately the soul is the essence of creation. The soul is life. The soul is ultimately free will. And when the soul comes into this world, it's built within a structure of distraction. And depending whether or not we choose to understand that this life is ultimately not really here to serve the goodness of the free will. This world is more, at least within this present moment, is kind of programming the free will around an illusion of freedom. So we think our free will has free will, but it actually has like a bubble of freedom within control. And when we start to look at this reality, it's realistically a bubble of freedom within a very controlled, just within a very controlling state of existence. And it's not freedom. It's controlling our free will. And it's just in this present moment of existence, this is our reality. And ultimately speaking, all we can do realistically is come back to our true self and ask ourselves, how much are we serving this world? What are we doing in this world that is opening up our true freedom, our true state of free will? Because a lot of the time, when we are only serving this reality, we're ultimately just joining and adhering to this reality. We're ultimately being categorized into the box of the reality because we're choosing to play the game. And there's nothing wrong about playing the game, but it's more, we just need to be careful of if we want to play the game, then that's our choice. But when we start to, what's kind of ironic is when we see other people really pushing people into the game and really creating this really destructive mindset of judgment. And this is where judgment's ultimately formed, is that people who don't play the game, they're being judged to play the game. And we see this when we're very young and very, growing into, our potential, and we're ultimately closed and shut down to our own potential just because it was relevant to the person who shut down their potential. And ultimately, their potential was shut down by someone else's potential who was shut down. And realistically, what's important is to understand that this reality, true freedom, comes from a connection to divinity itself. When we connect to divinity, we become truthfully free within that presence of time. And the reality which we're living in only generates a sense of freedom, a sense of happiness. But the people who are only dependent on that freedom and happiness understand that without the measures of that existence, the freedom won't last. It's only temporary.